Alright, get ready to roll, guys. Watch out for those red light runners, though. Alright.
If you haven't seen it yet, I have the video of yesterday's MLK Block Day 1 training ride below. It was a meaty ride. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. Today is a locally famous Sunday morning Will Lenkovich training ride. Typically during the off-season when it happens because of weather, this ride is more muted. During the season, it is pedal to the metal. This being mid-January on a cold day with a little bit of fog, I wasn't sure what to expect. At the very least, I have 15 miles of endurance to get out there, and depending on what happens during the ride, I may back off if it's getting too tough for me. Then I can have another 10 to 15 miles to get back home. After yesterday's ride, I don't know how much fast I have in my legs. When I got to the start, there was a small group there, and a lot of the local racers were down south racing in Ontario, California. So I figured this was going to be on the more muted end. When it started out, Will took off, and then it was all go from that point. Maybe it felt all go to me because I'm an old guy and everyone else isn't. I had that big ride yesterday, and I'm not sure how many of the others rode yesterday. Regardless, I was going to hang on for as long as I could, and if I got dropped, well, I'll just do endurance to get back home. Jumping ahead a few miles, I'm now doing between 350 and 400 watts on somebody's wheel. This intersection that we're approaching, this is where I typically get dropped many times in the past. Will, who's been pulling like a monster, finally pulls off, and my buddy Dave in front, I'm hoping that he doesn't keep up the pace. Just in case, I pull off behind Will because I'm officially in the reamed category. I'm hoping I recover quick enough to get on the last person's wheel as they go by. Still not fully recovered enough and looking for every second of time I can get to get a little more recovery, I stay on Will's wheel and hope that he gets right on the wheel rather than create a gap and then jump up. Because if he jumps to fill a gap, I could lose contact, and just that half a second of distance to the people in front would be enough to get me dropped at this point. Fortunately, I'm back on. Also fortuitous for me is that as we approach our last lighted intersection and it's red, I get to slow and have a little more recovery. I'm starting to think that the only reason I haven't been dropped yet is because of the training I've been doing, and more specifically the over-under training. If this was 2 weeks earlier when I hadn't yet started my over-under training, I would have been dropped by now. Jumping forward a few miles, I am on the back and just hanging on. I'm trying to last. That's the main thing I'm doing. So when people come back from their pulls, what I'm doing is I'm getting behind their wheel, calling for them to jump in, and then I stay behind them. I'm trying to stay connected with the group until we get to the town of Friant. At that point, we're going to take a left turn and go up a wall. And I'm hoping that I can cajole everyone to go slow enough so I can be with them at the top. Now, I notice the rider in front of me is wearing all black. The rider that's coming back from her pole is also wearing all black. This husband and wife duo are triathletes, and pretty strong triathletes at that. They are giving road racing a try this year. They have joined the local Ascend racing team. And right now, I'm enjoying the fact that they are both tall triathletes. A few miles later, I'm still with the group and we hit the town of Friant. We're ready to make our left turn to go up the wall. Here's where I start to do some thinly veiled groveling.
I'm sorry, did I hear somebody say rolling regroup at the top? Did I hear that?
Group Spring Valley.
Oh. Okay, somebody go in front of me.
After the top of the wall, I soft pedaled for Corey, who, as a big triathlete, had a harder time on that wall than I did. We then hoofed it until we caught up to Ascend co-team leader Joe and Corey's wife. Then we continued to power on and chase until at certain points, Corey dropped off, then I dropped off. Then Corey and I got together and we continued to power on to the turnaround point.
For the record, I waited for him.
While the overall gradient back to the start finish was negative, there are plenty of risers to get dropped on. Job one for me was to get to the finish with the group. While I was at the rest stop, I was talking to one young rider who was starting to experience palpitations while he was riding. In fact, when he would be drilling it, he would start to get dizzy. That was telling me he was having AFib or AFib-like episodes where his heart chambers were fluttering so fast that not all the blood was able to leave those chambers. So that means that less oxygenated blood was going into his circulatory system, which meant less oxygenated blood was getting to his muscles. Therefore, he was starting to get dizzy. Since he's about 34, I then asked if he had gotten boosted, because I did run into another local rider where he got boosted, and he was a young guy, and then he started experiencing palpitations. Both Moderna and Pfizer booster shots have been associated with two rare heart inflammation conditions, myocarditis and pericarditis. However, the rider I was talking to at the rest stop, he hadn't gotten boosted. There could be something else going on. However, his symptoms have gotten better with time. So who knows? I suggested it's always a good idea, especially in these cases, to go talk to your doctor. Since we're on the subject about the heart, let's talk about mine. This was a 72-mile, 4+ hour ride. When I got home, I was feeling good, but I was feeling a bit worn. Soon after, I could feel palpitations start to happen every once in a while. That was telling me that I was very fatigued and that I should be careful and not push things. After my recovery drink, a shower, and a meal, I went to sleep, and I slept for about 2 hours, I think. After that, the few palpitations I was starting to get were pretty much gone. Regardless of that being the situation, the type of training ride I was going to do the next day, on day 3 of the MLK block, was still up in the air. As you can see the flags from the right, we have a slight wind coming from our right. We have 2 small risers coming, the second one typically being a sprint. Should I survive those with the group, then we'll be on the flats, and that's where things get tough. Jumping forward a bit, I am on the flats and I'm still with the group. As we leave the town of Friant, we immediately go into pace lining. Corey and Jessica, being triathletes, did quite well with this. That still didn't prevent me from spewing out unsolicited advice every once in a while. The longer the pace lining went on, the more I was getting worn, and I would imagine everyone else too. After about 5 miles of more pace lining, I'm surprised I'm still with the group as we hit the last climb coming into the finish. Why I'm thinking I can pace line up this climb, I don't know, but that's what I try to do. Here's where I got to back off. So I'm hoping just a few people go by that there's people behind me that I can hook up with. I'm counting as they're going by. I see Jessica go across, then I see her hubby go across, Corey, and then I'm thinking, you know, I'm the last person. As it turns out, I miscounted a bit. Corey was back there and I didn't even realize it. So I'm not giving up at this point. I'm thinking I'm the last person, so I am doing what I can to get up to the 2 in front of me. Those 2 being Jessica and Joe. I do get up to them, and Joe puts in at least half a mile of a stellar effort to get us reconnected up with the main group. Soon thereafter, the sprint starts. The sprint that I've forgotten about. The sprint that doesn't matter that I've forgotten about it because I can't sprint anyway. And even if I could sprint, I don't have the legs to sprint now. All I can do is barely hang on to Jessica's wheel. Oh look, how cute. I'm thinking about going in the front and pulling. Well, that quickly goes away and I get back on her wheel. As I bid them adieu, I pull off to start my 15-mile trek to get home. And that trek is going to be a lot slower than what I've been doing. I'm pretty worn. I said earlier in the video that I was worn a bit when I got home. I was actually more than worn a bit. I also took solace that with the workout I did yesterday, today was a good day for me. The execution of my training plan seems to be going well. I hope you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. My MLK Block Day 3 video will be coming out soon. And as always, remember, because this channel needs the help, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.